Nani. And also thank you, Rashika. Unplanned with Rashika, but I think Rashika just actually opened the beginning of what I wanted to share this session. So before I go into sharing about what do I understand by the topic and why it's important for feminists to work on this issue is I'm going to share a story with you all, which has its own back story, which I'll save it for later, but I'm just going to share a half bit of the story is the first ever session that I was asked to do a session with the first ever DIVA MC members in a room when we were still operating back at Nolene and Shirley's front room. I was asked to do a session. And when I was given this book by Nolene, which was actually about women's SRHR, women's health and SRHR booklet, and it was this thick, for those of you if you can see, it was this thick, and it has all these issues about woman's body and the beautiful thing about woman's body. And I was to pick a session on this booklet and conduct a teaching for all the MC, Management Collective, and the staff of DIVA back then in 2011 or 2012. I'll check that out. But around that time, when DIVA was just beginning, and one of the things that really excited me to read in that book was this issue about masturbation. While I was looking through all other issues that was on this book, only one that kind of really stood out for me was masturbation, because it was one of the issues that I feel like we were never told, and we were always uh, been told that we cannot experience our bodies with this. If you are from a Fijian traditional household, there's not even a discussion about that in your home from your early childhood until you grow up. The learning, the knowledge that you gain about your bodies and the pleasure that you was supposed to feel in certain parts of your body, you get to learn that on your own. It is nothing, it was never anything like something that needs to be discussed in a home. And to have that session with my friends, with my group of friends, and I must say, the minute that I raised that we are going to talk about masturbation, all the heads in the room just went down and nobody was able to say anything. And I was kind of prepared for that, because even for myself, it is big discomfort, but if we don't start opening, if we don't start creating spaces to start talking about that, then there will never be a chance for us to change some of these embedded patriarchal controlling coercion thinking and practice that is embedded with us right from childhood. And for me, that's why this topic of this webinar is very important. It's important because it creates a space for us to really discuss as feminists, as human rights defenders, as LGBTQI, as sex workers, as women with disability, people with disability. If we are not given any opportunity to first discover, experience, be okay with the body that we hold, understand we don't even, like what Roshika was sharing about, this thing about pleasure. We were not even, it's like it's a crime to talk about pleasure, even with our friends, right? Even we only can speak about that. We can only speak about that confidently in a joking matter, in a space where it's about, oh, it's joking, but never in a serious conversation where it's really about orgasm. Like, how are you experiencing orgasm? Do you even understand what orgasm means? Right? Because we've been co-opted so much in certain knowledge you need to know, certain knowledge you don't. Reproductive rights, yes. The minute we go into spaces in rooms where we raise SRHR, with issues about sexual reproductive health and rights, the mentioning of reproductive rights, yes, you will see the room move. Yes, you will see everybody raising their hands. But the minute you want to speak about the sexual rights, the sexual services of it, you will have a silent room. Why? Because it's been patriarchal, like how Roshika and Tamani has mentioned earlier. It's been embedded so much in our system that even when we are the culprit, when we are the handmaiden of patriarchal behavior in our community, in our society, in our home, we don't take time to reflect on that. And I think for DIVA and how we do that is the praxis concept what helps us to move some of that work, to make sure that after 11, 12 years of being in existence, that we can have a webinar that discuss these kind of issues, this kind of topic. Rashika has mentioned earlier, rightfully, the issues of religion, the issues about taboo in the culture, but also we need to be real. Cultural is flexible nowadays. One of the things that colleague of mine always say, you're not still going by Billy when you go to your village, right? You're going in your rev, your car. So it is changing. So having culture change, why are we not allowing opportunity to also see some of these issues that is really oppressing women in accessing, not only accessing services, but really killing women's body, harming women's body in terms of them accessing not just the services, but being able to celebrate also who they really are. And I think for me, understanding the topic is really about us. We need to move away from being in our little uh, box into saying that sexual reproductive health and rights is just about making babies when it's more than that. It's about accessing safe abortion. The rights that may be part of what we can start doing now is, do you understand the laws in your country? Roshika has shared about Fiji law. And there are some countries here in Fiji that you only can access those services if you are being diagnosed by three separate doctors. They should sign off that you should be accessing the services. Where is the patient and doctor confidentiality practice in that, right? So, but we do not speak about that. Why we are not talking about that as feminists? Because if we are to talk about empowering women, making sure women are empowered enough to participate at their full self in all this other work that they do, then why we are not prioritizing taking care of women's bodies? Why are we still allowing women's body to be harmed in such a way where they are not only expected to be breadwinners of the family, but also the carer, right? And I think part of this conversation that we are having today is about not just about changing how we move in the SRHR movement or in the work of SRHR, but how it's also linked to all these issues that we've spoken about earlier, about economic, social, and climate justice. Because in all these areas, in all this level of work, it will consider the body to be able to move mentally, physically, and also emotionally. And if that is not something that we are considered about, then we should not be expected to be participating or to be contributing into our full self. So how we are trying to move some of that work within DIVA is, yes, the importance of bodily autonomy, because we need to have that, right? But also we need to start setting up boundaries where it's also about body integrity. How do we keep our bodies away from system or services that keep oppressing us, right? And this is something that we're discussing yesterday that with Nolene is that we won't be able to move freely and fully practice our bodily autonomy if they keep building up all these walls that keep restricting us from practicing it. We may know it, that we have it, but how is the practicing of it for us as women who are already empowered, who are already fit enough or already secured enough to be moving in our own journey? We need to start naming what this patriarchal system is still putting up, like what Tamani mentioned, all these fascist issues about restricting of our funding now in this particular work of sexual reproductive health and rights, right? We can look at other agencies, how their funding on those streamlines have been restricted. But why people are not really making more noise on the loss of funds for sexual and reproductive health and rights when it's about all these issues that women are facing day in, day out, from violence, from economic injustice, from social into ecological justice. Like, we need to start creating more space like this. And I feel like to be able to raise this, it won't only, it's not just about feminist or feminist organization or groups that are already part of the sexual and reproductive health and rights work, but it needs more of us, the ones that are onto the legal end, like abortion. I was part of a national young women's group, which I am still grateful that I left back in the beginning of the year, because there was a very pushback, big pushback on speaking about safe abortion, decriminalizing abortion fully. And at times it can be very sad to see that how we cherry pick certain issues that we want to speak on when it comes to issues that are really close or related to our everyday lives, like issues of sexual and reproductive health and rights, how we cherry pick what we want to speak about, what we want to work on, and what we just don't want to touch. Why we don't want to touch it? We need to self-reflect why we are not pushing ourselves. And I think part of what we are also doing it in DIVA is trying to create more spaces where we have an honest conversation about that. And every meeting, this session where we are challenging ourselves, how we are not pushing ourselves enough to. And that has to be also something that we convince our other feminist organization or friends to also start doing to yourself. Like, start questioning like why we are so comfortable in just speaking about certain things and why we don't want to touch on certain things. If it's about religion, then let's name it that. If it's about traditional, if it's about your policy within your, let's name that. For us, one of the things that we always talk about is it's better to know than not knowing, and then we tiptoeing around each other. But then at the end of it, like, both don't get what we want, because as much as we want to move, there's always this counterpart that we always have to think about. And then when this other part is not clear where they at, and we are not clear how to move with you, either you're a service provider or you're an activist or you're an advocate of the same issue, that it's very unclear, and we get lines like it's very hard to work with us, or we don't work with you all. But that's not the issue. The issue is that if we provide spaces where we can speak about all these issues freely and we be clear with where we are on the line, we always say there's always going to be the frontliners who's going to be out there screaming, chanting, and walking on the street, and there's going to be the middle liner who's going to be trying to negotiate, whether they're going in the front or when they step back. And there's going to be the backline people who's going to be the one that are doing a lot of underground work in changing policies, making sure that they're influencing legal spaces to make sure that, it's not just about having it on a piece of paper, but really the practical and the drawdown of those policies. So all the work is different. It's different and it's all important. And I think, just to wrap up, I know Tamani has spoken about some of the work that we're already doing in DIVA, but two specific ones that I want to share is how we are making sure that this work on coercing women's body is part of our everyday work. Is we have the free shop that we are making sure we are providing what community needs, high community needs or family needs. And also we have this Just Fixes program that is really about making sure that women get access the services that they required. If it's rocking up to the police station, making sure that they report and they get justice for the violence that they've been put through, or they have to access services that is set up by the government agencies that they're supposed to be getting. But at times it's very hard because they have to jump through a lot of loops just to be able to be served in the front counter. So that program really kind of is a step with all this other work that we're doing about making sure that we are part of not just the local, but the national structure, the regional and the global, in all different means, through coalition, through uh, partnerships and networks. So we are pushing through in all these areas and making sure that it's never going to be only about autonomy, but also about safeguarding our bodies also. Because for us, I think maybe just to wrap up and say, for us, it's about liberation on all territories for all women and all people. And also, I think the common sense one is about do unto others what you would want to do unto you, right? If you don't want people to be harassing your bodies and telling you that this is a certain way that you should act, this is a certain way you should sit, certain way you should cut your hair, if you don't want people to do that to you, then you also better restrict yourself from doing that to others. And I think for now, I will hold it to that, and Tamani will open for discussion if there's furthermore. Thank you.